Imagine waking up tomorrow to discover that every ship on Earth had vanished. Not just the massive container vessels crossing the Pacific. Not just cruise ships, fishing boats, oil tankers, or naval fleets. Every ship, every harbor suddenly empty. Every ocean strangely still. Within hours, supermarkets would begin running out of food. Fuel shortages would spread across entire countries. Factories would shut down as vital parts failed to arrive. Global trade would grind to a halt, costing the world billions of dollars every single day. Nearly everything you touched, from your phone to your clothes, your coffee, your car, even the grain that became your morning cereal, had almost certainly spent part of its journey aboard a ship. For something so essential, ships are remarkably easy to overlook. They're simply there, floating silently on the horizon. But behind every vessel lies one of humanity's greatest inventions. Not because ships were the fastest machines ever built, not because they were the strongest, but because they allowed humans to do something no other species ever managed. They turned oceans from barriers into highways. And once that happened, the world would never be the same again. This story isn't really about wood, sails, or giant waves. It's about curiosity.
Yeah, it is
about ordinary
eerie.
people willing to disappear beyond the edge of the known world. About merchants chasing impossible fortunes. Kings gambling entire kingdoms. Explorers risking death for maps that didn't yet exist. And shipbuilders solving engineering problems so difficult that entire civilizations depended on their answers. Because every time humans learned to build a better ship, history changed. And strangely enough, it all may have started with someone simply trying not to get wet. Long before cities, before writing, before kings and empires, people lived beside rivers. Water gave them fish, fresh drinking supplies, fertile land, and easy travel. But rivers also divided families, hunting grounds, and communities. Crossing them wasn't always easy. At first, people probably swam. Then they held onto floating branches. Eventually, someone noticed something remarkable. Dead trees floated. That simple observation may have been one of the most important discoveries in human history. Nobody knows exactly who first climbed onto a floating log. Archaeology rarely preserves moments like that. Yet somewhere, tens of thousands of years ago, a human realized that instead of fighting the water, they could let the water carry them. It was an astonishing leap in thinking. Instead of seeing rivers as obstacles, they became roads. Soon, floating logs became tied together. Branches formed crude platforms. Animal skins were stretched over wooden frames. Bundles of reeds were lashed tightly enough to support human weight. These weren't ships, not yet, but they planted an idea. If something floated, perhaps it could be controlled. That tiny shift in thinking would eventually reshape the planet. Some of the earliest evidence comes from Australia. Modern humans somehow reached the continent at least 50,000 years ago. There's only one problem. Australia has never been connected to mainland Asia by land during human history. Even when sea levels were dramatically lower during the last ice age, wide stretches of ocean still separated the islands. That means the first Australians almost certainly crossed open water. Not accidentally, not drifting on debris after a storm. To transport families, food, tools, and enough people to establish permanent communities, they must have deliberately built watercraft capable of surviving dangerous sea crossings. Imagine what that required.
Pull the ropes now, heave!
No metal tools, no
Steady
written
the sail.
plans, no maps, no compass, only observation, memory, and courage. Those forgotten sailors became some of humanity's earliest explorers. Yet we don't know their names. History rarely remembers the first people who made the impossible look ordinary. As thousands of years passed, people across the world experimented independently. Along the Nile, thick bundles of papyrus reeds became elegant boats that glided across calm
Heave together
waters.
now!
In Mesopotamia, circular boats woven from reeds and coated in natural bitumen carried goods between settlements. Across the Pacific, island communities developed sophisticated canoes capable of traveling astonishing distances. Different materials, different designs, different cultures. Yet everyone kept arriving at the same conclusion. Water wasn't the enemy. Water was opportunity. Then something extraordinary happened in ancient Egypt. Around 5,000 years ago, the Nile wasn't merely a river. It was the beating heart of an entire civilization. Almost everything depended on it. The river flooded predictably, leaving behind rich black soil that turned deserts into farmland. Villages stretched like beads along its banks, connected by water far more efficiently than by land. There was just one problem. As Egypt grew richer, it needed larger boats, much larger. Transporting stone for monuments, grain for growing cities, soldiers, livestock, and trade goods demanded something stronger than bundles of reeds. Shipbuilders turned to wood. At first, this seemed obvious. Wood was stronger, it lasted longer, it could support greater weight. But building large wooden boats introduced engineering challenges nobody had faced before. A single hollowed tree trunk could only become so large. Eventually, builders began joining separate planks together. That sounds simple today. It wasn't. Wood naturally twists. It expands when wet. It shrinks when dry. Without proper construction, the entire hull could split apart under its own weight. Egyptian craftsmen responded with remarkable ingenuity. Instead of relying on nails, which were scarce and expensive, they drilled holes through wooden planks and stitched them together using ropes made from plant fibers.
Keep pushing. We must reach the deeper water.
Fabric, flexible enough
Hold the
to
child
survive
close.
movement, strong
The
enough
journey
to
has
carry
just begun.
enormous loads. It was engineering centuries ahead of what most people imagine ancient civilizations capable of achieving. These vessels transported the limestone and granite used to build monuments that still dominate the Egyptian landscape today. When tourists stand before
Pull
the
harder on the
pyramids
ropes.
and wonder how
Watch the
millions
timber.
of heavy stone blocks reach the construction sites, part of the answer floated quietly along the Nile. Ships. Without them, many of history's greatest monuments might never have existed. But Egypt mostly sailed predictable rivers. The real challenge waited beyond the horizon, the Mediterranean. Unlike rivers, seas don't cooperate. Currents shift unpredictably. Storms appear without warning. Waves strike from every direction. A boat, perfectly suited to calm fresh water, could be destroyed within hours at sea. For centuries, many civilizations stayed close to shore. Sail during daylight. Keep land in sight. If danger appeared, head back immediately. It was sensible, safe, reasonable. Then came a people who refused to accept those limits. The Phoenicians. They occupied a narrow strip of coastline in the eastern Mediterranean. Their homeland wasn't especially fertile. Large empires surrounded them. Competing through agriculture or conquest would have been nearly impossible. So they chose another path. They mastered the sea. Instead of building armies larger than their neighbors, they built ships better than anyone else. Generation after generation, Phoenician shipwrights experimented relentlessly. Hull shapes changed, cargo capacity increased, sails improved, steering became more precise, ports expanded. Shipbuilding transformed from practical craftsmanship into an advanced industry. Their forests supplied valuable cedar wood, light, durable, and highly prized throughout the ancient world. Soon, Phoenician ships weren't simply visiting nearby islands. They were crossing the entire Mediterranean. They established trading colonies hundreds, sometimes thousands of kilometers from home. Glass, purple dye, timber, wine, metal. Luxury goods flowed across the sea in astonishing quantities. Where other civilizations saw dangerous water, the Phoenicians saw profit. But trade wasn't their only achievement. As their voyages grew longer, sailors faced a terrifying problem. What happened when land disappeared? Near the coast, navigation was simple. Mountains,
These
cliffs,
amphorae are the
river
finest
mouths,
Sidon has to
everything
offer.
served as
The
landmarks.
silver is weighed and
out in
true.
open water.
We have a
There was
deal,
nothing.
merchant.
Just endless blue in
50
every
dinars for the set.
direction.
That is my final
One
offer.
mistake
50
could mean
dinars.
death.
I can offer
no
40,
roads,
and not a
no
coin more.
signposts,
Come, my friend.
no
These are the
rescue,
finest glazes in the
only
harbor.
sky
Hard right
and
rudder.
sea.
All hands. Brace
Most
for the
ancient
turn.
sailors
Secure
feared
the
sailing
lines.
beyond
The
sight
containers
of land
are
for
shifting.
exactly
Quickly
this
now.
reason. The Phoenicians decided to solve the problem. Instead of watching the coastline, they began watching the stars. Night after night, they noticed certain stars remained nearly fixed, while others slowly rotated around them. These patterns became reliable guides. The heavens turned into a map. Suddenly, ships could travel farther than ever before. Entirely new trade routes opened. Knowledge spread between distant civilizations. Ideas crossed the sea alongside cargo. And every successful voyage encouraged another. Each crossing made the world feel slightly smaller. But every improvement also created new temptations. Because once ships could reliably carry wealth across oceans, someone else would inevitably try to steal it. And that would transform ships from vehicles of commerce into something far more dangerous.
Look there, coming closer.
What do they want?
Quiet now. Hush!